Hello and welcome to the Vedic Conversation, where this week we are joined by Claire Robbie to talk about how meditation can help us emerge from under the influence of alcohol. Claire is a yoga and meditation teacher from Auckland, New Zealand, and the founder of No Beer, Who Cares, a community dedicated to shifting attitudes around how and why we drink and showing people that they can have a good time without alcohol. She is a former TV news reporter who has lived all over the world and taught yoga in LA for many years. She's studied Vedic meditation and now teaches awareness insight meditation, as well as coaching people one-on-one in how to reset their relationship with alcohol. Today we talk to her about her personal journey with alcohol and the insights she has had over the years about meditation and how it provides a healthier coping mechanism for the pressures of modern life. I'm Rory Kinsella, a Vedic meditation teacher based here in Sydney, and I'm joined for the conversation with Claire by my Vedic colleagues Anthony Thompson in London and Derrick Yanford in New York. And don't forget to stick around until the end, where we'll offer a practical exercise in how you can apply this knowledge to your daily life. And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So Claire, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Great. So you actually met Derrick and I in Mexico 3 years ago on Light Watkins' retreat, which was pivotal in inspiring me to quit drinking myself. And yeah, thank you for that inspiration. I guess I'd reached a point where I knew that alcohol was holding me back, but I hadn't yet grounded that realization in a real world way of doing something about it. And I guess you inspired me by being a normal person who decided, look, I'm just not going to drink at all. So it'd be great if you could talk a little bit about your personal journey with alcohol.
Thanks for describing me as normal.
Relatively.
Oh, goodness. So I had a really Kiwi, down here in New Zealand, I had a really Kiwi upbringing. My parents are very social. From age 16, I did what most New Zealand teenagers do. I started going to parties, trying different alcohol. I remember one of my first drinking experiences was with Zambuca, you know, that dark licorice tasting spirit. And we'd do a shot and then we'd light it on fire in our mouths. And I was like 16 years old and I thought I was so cool. Because I've always been a bit of a tomboy as well. So keeping up with the boys was something that definitely influenced how I drank. So yeah, it started pretty young, although compared to a lot of the teenagers around me, I didn't probably binge drink as much. I did pretty well at school. I loved debating and drama and all those kinds of things. And it wasn't really until university, I think, that things became more problematic. You know, you study hard, you party hard. And I also, at that time in my life, met a group of people who were really heavy drinkers. They were in the rugby scene. They were boys in the rugby scene. My boyfriend at the time, who eventually became my husband, was a very heavy drinker. And I just kind of, like in a slipstream, got into some bad habits with alcohol. And that was early 2000s. So the party drug scene was just really kicking off here in New Zealand. So dance parties and ecstasy became a thing for me. After I finished uni, I moved to Tokyo, and that was the first time I lived away from my parents. And that's when I started to get real crazy with the drinking. I've always had amazing jobs. And I think because I've always had amazing work and loved the work I do and done quite well at my work, I felt like my drinking wasn't even a problem. To be perfectly honest, I didn't even think about my drinking because I was always surrounded by people who were doing the same. I got into media in Tokyo, and then I moved to Shanghai, and I was also working, this is when I started working as a journalist for radio stations. And in the media world, same thing, you work hard, you party hard. And then when I was 25, so young, I came back to New Zealand for a wedding. And at the wedding, I did what I always do at weddings. I got written off basically. I could always function very highly drinking too. So lots of people the next day to me would be like, were you wasted? And I was like, yeah, but would function okay. So, but at this particular wedding, I tripped over, landed on my own champagne flute and severed my patellar tendon completely, which is a pretty major injury. Couldn't go back to China, was in a leg cast for ages. Interestingly, that wasn't the moment I sort of thought, hang on, maybe you're drinking too much. That was just sort of a byproduct of a big night, But that accident got me into yoga. So I started practicing Bikram yoga because a physiotherapist said to me, you're going to have a limp, you'll never run again. This is going to be a huge problem for the rest of your life. And my nature tends to be, when someone tells me that kind of thing, no, it's not. Just you watch me. And so Bikram yoga had just come to New Zealand. I'd never done any yoga. I thought it was a whole lot of hum and crazy spiritual stuff. The word spiritual would have freaked me out. But with Bikram yoga, it's very no nonsense, practical, physical. It's like a workout, a hot workout. But it was my first experience of yoga and these postures, and it completely healed my leg. And from then on, I practiced a little bit of yoga every now and then. But here in New Zealand, it was still a very physical practice. There wasn't a lot of talk of spirituality. To me, it was just another form of exercise, sort of. I would notice how I would feel after yoga would be different than if I went to the gym. And then I moved to America, and that's when drinking and also taking drugs became problematic for me. But again, I didn't realize fully to the extent of how much of a coping mechanism these had become for me until I went through a divorce. And one of the reasons I left my husband was because I thought his drinking was problematic. And I thought, if I leave him and I start again, there was a lot of other reasons as well. In the back of my mind, I thought things would be different if this relationship ended. So I left him, and a month into leaving, I was still drinking a lot and partying in Los Angeles. I also had a job in a hotel where I did events for celebrities, and, drinking and drugs were everywhere. So I kept doing those things. And then a friend of mine was doing a yoga teacher training, and it was on the weekends. And I thought, if I do this on the weekends, maybe that'll tidy me up a bit. Maybe if I focus on that, it'll keep me out of mischief. Like, that was a conscious thought. Okay, weekends, because weekends were the problem time for me. Couldn't even plan things on weekends, especially Sundays, because I knew I'd be hungover. So I went to this first teacher training, and it was so phenomenal that first day, learning about the yamas and the niyamas, these codes of conduct within a yogic discipline. The first one being ahimsa, this concept of non-harm. So not just not harming others with our actions or our words, but also all of a sudden, I remember this penny dropping of how I was harming myself with what I was consuming and the thoughts. I had no conscious awareness of the quality of what was going on in my mind. And I remember thinking, whoa, it's not a great environment in here. And in that moment, I said to myself, I'm going to give up drinking for a year. And it was not until I made that commitment to myself that I realized what a problem it had become. And I'd never considered myself an alcoholic. But I started going to AA even because it was so difficult for me to socialize. I'd go to these social events and I'd feel so uncomfortable. I'd sit there with my water, looking at everyone with their wine. And I knew I didn't have a physical dependency, but that was the moment I realized I had an emotional dependency. I was using it because I felt anxious. It was one of the first moments I realized I was an anxious person. I sort of would describe myself as an anxious person. And over the course of this year, combined with this yoga teacher training and developing for the first time ever this awareness of my internal environment and how your internal environment literally shapes everything for you, the landscape of your life. I started to shift things, and I haven't done drugs. I never did drugs ever again from that moment onwards. I stopped drinking for a couple of years, and over those 2 years, I became a yoga teacher in Los Angeles. I started exploring meditation as well, because at first, my very first experience of meditation was Shavasana. So in a yoga practice, when you lie down on your mat and you wonder if you're doing it right. So I remember lying there going, should I be thinking? I don't know if I should be thinking. Should I fall asleep? Like, what do we do here? So that was my first taste of meditation. And then that 2 years of not drinking was combined with this new knowledge, and I was lapping everything up. I was very fortunate to live in Los Angeles at a time where incredible teachers were very accessible. So this is 10, 11 years ago now, very accessible. And also I'd gone through a divorce, so it was just me. I had no fixed abode basically, and I just devoted myself to study. And that experience has changed the trajectory of my life completely. After the 2 years though, I did start drinking again, and I never drank the same. So I never had there was like a fiendish way I would drink when I was drinking, where once I'd had 2 drinks, it was game on. And I could moderate it, and I'd have a couple, and I wouldn't drink to the extent that I had been drinking. But the conversations in my head about alcohol, even just having 1 drink, I'd feel really shameful or guilty. And what I recognize now is that when I started drinking again, I had so much more awareness around it. So I was aware of when I was drinking, who I was with when I'd want to drink, how I would feel after 1 or 2, that feeling where you leave your body. So I was aware that I was doing it to leave my body, because potentially I didn't feel comfortable in that moment. And then also having a meditation practice and a yoga practice, you are so much more aware of what's happening in your physical body. So even after 1 drink, and I was navigating meditation around drinking, which we've kind of spoken about, Rory. So I knew that if I had a glass of wine, I couldn't meditate, because for me, it would just feel disgusting. So I'd plan to do my meditation. So I was always getting in my practices, but became this really annoying juggle. And then in the morning, if I'd had a drink and I'd meditate, it just wasn't the same. And it was like scouring a dirty pan before I would get into any state of relaxation. I had to almost get through this layer of, I don't know what you'd call it, like toxicity before I would. And so the drinking slipped away more and more and more slowly over time. And then about nearly 4 years ago, one New Year's Eve, I'd only had a couple of drinks, and I was looking around the pub that I was at this beautiful beach up north. Everyone was really drunk. And I just remember looking at my drink, and it was an espresso martini of all the last drinks to have. My God. I remember looking at it and going, what are you doing? That you don't even want this. And I was literally drinking because everyone else was. And I put it down, and I was like, I think I'm done. And I woke up the next day, wrote something on Facebook, because I'm big on accountability. Like if I tell people I'm going to do something, I am much more likely to follow through with it. So I put something on Facebook about how I was going to do another sober year. So I thought, okay, I'll just give it another year of sobriety, being alcohol free. And I had 80 people message me here in New Zealand saying, I'll do it with you. I'll do it with you. And I was like, whoa, that's interesting. Because I never really thought about other people's drinking, even though I'd been to AA a bit. They were a different category to me back then. Like they were alcoholics, whereas I was just like a normal party drinker. But I recognized just from that one post and the feedback I got that this was more of a thing than potentially I'd contemplated. And I remembered the loneliness. I felt this loneliness as I made the transition from my old life to a new life of finding people who were on the same page as me. And I was very fortunate in Los Angeles for those 2 years. I had 2 friends who would always hang out with me, and one of them wasn't really a big drinker. In LA, it's a little different too, because lots of people don't drink. And also AA is quite normal. Whereas here in New Zealand, it's not like that. If you don't drink, then it's definitely changing, but our drinking culture is so entrenched that to be a non-drinker, you either have to be pregnant or have had a terrible problem. Like it's it's unusual to go to a party and say, no, I don't drink, or to say not today. So I knew that there was like, I know the power of connection and support. So I decided to organize these little meetups once a month at a bar in around the corner for people who were choosing to go alcohol free, or for people to practice going to a bar and ordering a tonic water or a ginger beer. Because often that's the thing that most people feel uncomfortable about at the beginning, is going to a bar and going, instead of that conditioning of I'll have a beer or whatever it is, wine, for the first time saying, can I please have a soda water? People just need to practice that, and it needs to be normalized, and it needs to be, these new neural pathways need to fire until that is what you do. And so this was before I'd really studied human behavior like I have in the last few years, and done some really incredible trainings. But just kind of intuitively, I knew that people just needed to practice doing these things and feel supported. And I knew my self-awareness practices had been pivotal in helping me understand why and how I used to do the things I did. So it was also a way for me to secretly, sneakily try and get meditation into people's consciousness. So at the beginning of these events, it was so funny, I would do a guided meditation in the middle of a bar. And I remember the first few times, especially some of the dudes would come over and go, oh my God, I was like, what? You're going to get us to close our eyes in a bar? And I just do a really simple way for people to connect with themselves and do literally just a few deep breaths. And people would open their eyes and you could see the difference. Because quite often the people would come to these events and they'd feel a bit uncomfortable or nervous because they were going to go to a bar and not have a drink. So that was also a way for me I feel like one of the things I've been doing is normalizing things that are not normal here in New Zealand, because I'm normal. Meditation and not drinking. Because for me, the combination of not numbing yourself with alcohol, and then the beautiful thing we do twice a day of experiencing our emotions, is like a really quick way to evolve as a human being. So in a nutshell, that's what I've been doing.
Awesome. I love what you're saying about using alcohol as a way in to kind of give meditation to people who might not be interested in. That's definitely been my experience, because this is kind of touching on what we were talking about privately yesterday, in that alcohol is the kind of most well-known coping mechanism tool out there. It's on every street corner, it's government approved, it's taxed, it's there, it's easy, but it doesn't work. It's not effective in the long term, and it can be very damaging. So I think it's really a useful point of entry to people to say, hey, look, you use this thing called alcohol to relax. How's it working out for you? And when you ask that, it's surprising. Like you said, with your 80 people who contacted you on New Year's Day, a lot of people feel, I don't really know what's up here, but I would like to drink less.
It's a really tricky one too, because I find it hard to dance the line of feeling judgmental, and then also really knowing what a problem it is for many, many people. Some people can drink perfectly fine. And I remember one of the last times I had a drink where I had this moment of like, oh, this is drinking mindfully, I was in Sydney actually, and I'd had this beautiful day of doing a lot of yoga. I'd done a workshop with the woman I did my Vedic training with, Jackie Lewis, in Sydney. And it was a beautiful sunny day, and I hopped on the back of my brother's motorbike, and we zoomed up to a little bar, and I had a glass of red wine. And because I was with my brother, I was already relaxed. There was no need to mask anything. So I was with someone who I love very dearly and was completely comfortable. And I had this one drink in the sun overlooking the beach, and I was like, oh, that was beautiful. And then I stopped, and I didn't need any more, and nothing had been triggered. So I know some people can drink like that. But unfortunately, for most people, it is an unconscious coping mechanism. And I think even helping people understand the relationship between sensation, so what we're feeling, and how it's driving our thoughts and how our thoughts drive our actions, even just helping people cultivate awareness around, oh, I'm feeling what we might call anxiety. Where does it feel in my, where is it in my body, et cetera, et cetera. What are the thoughts that come from that anxiety? And even just teaching people that is even happening in their body and their minds is incredibly powerful, because I definitely wasn't taught that at school. And I've only really learned about that in the last 10 years. And if I had have potentially known that earlier, then maybe I would have been able to make some slightly different choices, or learn the importance of regulating my nervous system, or understanding the concept of unconscious conditioning guiding our behavior. Maybe I would have made some slightly different choices, although those choices that I did make have led me to be able to be really empathetic and compassionate for every single person I work with. Because when people come in to talk to me about resetting their relationship with alcohol, I know exactly how they feel. And I know, like, we do this really cool visualization when people are going to a party or an event, and they're like, okay, I'm going to this event, and I know that I'm going to feel, I know it's going to be hard for me not to drink. So we do this visualization process of getting into the party. We do what will happen if you don't drink, what will happen if you do drink. And I know what will happen if you have that one drink. Like, I know that pattern so well within me that I can talk people through it perfectly. And visualization has been a really, really powerful way for me to help people reset their relationship with alcohol and cultivate that self-awareness around their drinking.
Yeah. I mean, I personally found that, because I started meditating about 4 years before I quit drinking, but I was kind of reducing over that time. And what it was for me is that awareness that you're talking about that we generate in meditation, I was more able to sense the effect that alcohol was having on me. And the way I think about it was that before, I was not feeling good during the week, and I'd drink and I'd numb that feeling of not feeling good. But when I started meditating, I would start to feel generally pretty good. And then I would find that the alcohol would make me feel cloudy and, kind of confused, and it was ruining my high, my normal high, rather than giving me, it's like, by making yourself feel good normally through practices like meditation and yoga, it means that you're not having to run away from anything. And I think people often use alcohol as a way to escape their lives, and you don't have anything to escape from if you've got this way of dealing with your stress and anxiety normally.
Although I do think some people use yoga and meditation. My teacher here in New Zealand once said to me, what would happen if you stopped meditating? What would happen if you stopped working out and going to the gym? How would you feel? And also from that discussion, I recognize that even practices that are healthy for us and good for us can also become coping mechanisms. And I think my meditation practice has shifted over the years. At the beginning, it was a way to make me feel better. And that changed as well as I became, you know, how we just start accepting more and more and more, and become so much more accepting of ourselves. And there's these moments of like, oh, I don't need to be different. Who I am is actually okay. And then from that place as well, we start making better choices because we just feel better about ourselves. And so even my meditation stopped being a coping mechanism for me too, because it was a form of escape. And if it didn't make me feel better, if I would meditate or I do yoga and it didn't make me feel better, that would cause a lot of suffering as well. And then I realized, oh, it's not about it making me feel better. It's about showing me the reality of this situation, and that there are these uncomfortable emotions. There are these feelings that I've run away from, or I've wanted to make better, or I've inherently made wrong. You know, the anxiousness, for example. I had no idea up until maybe 3 years ago how much fear was resonating in my body. And we call it anxiety. For me, it was just fear and a bit of shame mixed in with a bit of shame. And it was so woven into the fabric of my being that I didn't know it was there. And even as a meditator for years and a practitioner of yoga for years, I had this moment of like, oh my gosh, there's this feeling here. And it's been there for a really long time, but it's not me, but it's there. And then for a while I was like, okay, well, I'm going to use meditation to get rid of it. And my teacher was like, how's it? I don't know if that's going to work for you. And I was like, how long will it take for it to go away if I just keep meditating? He was like, I don't know. It might not ever go away. Could you be okay with it being there forever? And I was like, no. He's like, that's probably your entry point into something.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about acceptance a lot on this podcast, and it's so powerful, and I just love the simplicity of it. Not that it's easy, but it is simple.
Yeah.
Where you go,
I know. How do you teach acceptance? How do you even describe it? When my students are like, okay, well, how do I accept it? And I was like, that's the problem, that question.
yeah, you just take everything that's happened, all the drinks you've had, all those bad mistakes you've made, and just go, okay, they're done. I accept them. What now? And what now?
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, it's a simple concept, but it's definitely not easy.
No, well, if there's any kind of trying, I always talk about the catch-22 of meditation. Have you read Catch-22?
Yeah.
So I don't have the quote on me, but Google the main quote of Catch-22. It's about this basically an Air Force pilot in World War II, Yossarian, and he's doing everything he can to be discharged. But the thing is, you can't be discharged unless you're crazy. But if you try to like show that you're crazy, it's very hard to explain. But the catch-22 of meditation is exactly that. The more you try, it's like that carrot in front of you, just, you can never quite reach it. But if you don't try, then you get there.
Yeah.
You don't want to try and get there, because then you won't get there.
That's counterintuitive, of course.
Yeah.
Because we're all brought up to try. I mean, our cultures are constantly telling us try. And the harder you work at this, the more likely it is that you'll get the desired result. And of course, I think with Vedic meditation, this is one of the biggest initial hurdles that, what do you mean I don't have to try? I mean, yeah, that's it. Don't, take your foot off the pedal and just enjoy the, the journey, whichever way it takes you.
Yeah.
That's a big ask. That's a very big ask at the beginning.
It is just so counterintuitive, because we are, it's deeply entrenched with our ego, isn't it? And our ego is just a part of being human, having an ego and wanting to survive. And to survive, we have to compete and we have to be better and all these things. So yeah, I think meditation has been the first thing in my life, even with with a physical yoga practice, there is a bit of trying involved. But even that you can do. I do this process called the Artist's Way quite regularly. And one of their practices is you get up in the morning and you write 3 pages stream of consciousness. And you do it for 3 months. And it's something that's actually stuck with me, this writing. I do it either before my meditation or after my meditation. And there are times when you wake up, just like when you meditate, where you just say, oh, God, this is going to be so hard. And this one sentence that her name's Julia Cameron had in this book is, learn to rest on the pages. So when you're writing, instead of, you can write and you can force it, but writing with no pressure, just letting the pen do what the pen wants to do. It doesn't have to be anything special. It doesn't have to be this groundbreaking novel. And same thing with a physical yoga practice. You can get onto your mat and relax into this physical process. Same thing with meditation. Like we can the concept of relaxing as you're doing something. I know for me, who's had anxiety fueling overachievement her whole entire life, to go, okay, there's no pressure here, just let what happens happen, has been pretty phenomenal.
Would you describe that as being very much in the moment? Just giving yourself to the moment and not thinking about what's going to happen in 5 minutes' time, not thinking about what people are going to say or how you're going to be judged. Yeah.
I think that's exactly what it is. It's becoming present to what's happening in this moment and just doing whatever sort of comes from you, I suppose, rather than forcing it out. And that act of writing like that every morning has been really, it almost removes a layer of the nonsense. You know how you have that background noise of nonsense? It kind of gets rid of that first thing in the morning, because you can write a to-do list. You can write, I need to do this and this and that and this and that. And sometimes if you get that out, you realize, oh, there's actually not a lot I have to do. It's just been triggering that. I had this funny moment in my meditation this morning where I was really trying to, I don't even know how it happened. I was really trying to figure out if the thoughts or the sensations come first. Or, because Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza, who does a lot of that really sciencey neuroscience stuff around meditation and human behavior. He talks a lot about the thoughts being first, and then they create the feeling. And I'm like, no, I reckon it's the feeling creating the thought. And then I'm like, is this what comes first, the chicken or the egg type scenario? And I spent a large portion of my meditation this morning just going, oh, what is it? And trying to figure it out.
You don't need to know.
No, but I would like to.
Could you talk a bit about awareness insight meditation and how it compares to Vedic?
Yeah. It's tricky when I'm talking to 3 Vedic meditation teachers. No pressure.
We're going to argue you down.
Yeah.
Tell us why it's better.
I've dreamed of this moment.
This is the Supreme Court.
I had a Vedic meditation teacher tell me once that Vedic meditation was the iPhone of meditation. So why would you buy any other kind of phone? And just like that doctor telling me I will never walk without a limp, I was like, hang on, let me figure this out. So I had a meditation. So I studied Vedic meditation, and I practiced with a mantra for probably not 2 years, I'd say, maybe just over a year. And the mantra, I studied with Buddhist teachers first. So I had my Hindu yoga entry point. In the temple around the corner from me up in Malibu was a Buddhist temple. And I'd go there, and you had to practice for an hour. And it was really hard. And I didn't understand a lot of the things they were saying because it was all in Pali or Sanskrit. And there's a lot of sort of highfalutin concepts that, if you're new to meditation, are very confusing and just don't make any sense at all. But I would go and study with these predominantly men. Actually, I think they were all men, and do my best, because what I saw around me was the people who I respected and admired the most had a seated meditative practice. And these people were doing things and were of service and living these very simple lives and teaching these beautiful concepts to people and really helping people. So I was like, okay, there's something in this meditation business, not business. So I studied, and I developed a practice, a meditative practice that was an hour each day. And I did that for a couple of years on top of a yoga practice. So my daily practices were hours long, which is not sustainable in my experience. Like, you can do that for a period of time, but then I was also unemployed, it was literally just me. So I could do those things. And I did a few retreats, and I got pretty deep into the study of Buddhist meditation. And then I did a Vedic course with Jackie in Sydney. And I loved her teaching. Her teaching was phenomenal, very easily digestible. And the science behind the twice a day meditative practices was incredible. So my practice shifted to this twice a day practice that was shorter. The mantra, though, slipped away from me very quickly. And 6 years ago, when I moved back to New Zealand, I started working with a teacher who is very non-dogmatic. You wouldn't put him in any kind of category, although he does do a lot of Vipassana sort of retreats. And what I recognized for me was the mantra had slipped away very quickly, and I was committed to my practices. And for me, the sensations in my body were more of a gateway into what we might call a meditative state. And also I recognized being okay with these sensations, relaxing into the flow of the energetic currents, because all emotion, sensation in our body is just energy moving through our body. Being able to relax into those sensations was very, very powerful. I could shift sensation. I could change my moods totally. I could energize myself. I could calm myself down without trying, if I just became more and more in tune with what was happening in my physical body. What was happening in my mind really became quite background noisy. Like, when I meditate, for me now, it is first of all, a very physical feeling practice. And so working with that teacher, because I would go to him and I'd say, but these Vedic teachers say we just, you use the mantra to transcend the mind. And he's like, you don't need it. And I was like, I don't feel like I do, but they say, and we had like some quite deep discussions about it. He's like, you don't need it. And so it just slipped away for me. But So Jackie's one of my favorite teachers in the world of meditation. I did retreats with Light Watkins, who's also a Vedic meditation teacher. And for me, it's one love, many paths. Different things resonate with different people. I am someone who loves to learn more, which is sometimes it's unnecessary, to be perfectly frank. But at the moment, I'm even working with a Swami over in India who's helping me understand the energies of the body a little more. Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist nun, her teachings have deeply resonated with me, and I'm reading I don't know what it is called, The Power of No Escape or something, The Wisdom of No Escape at the moment, and how she breaks down these ancient Buddhist teachings, which are basically tools for understanding human nature more. I love how Buddhism, like in this book, they have the 9 types of thinking. And now with the meditation practice, years and years of meditation under my belt, I understand these philosophical concepts so much better because I can apply them to my practice. Whereas in the beginning, when you're new, you're like, what are you talking about? It's like someone describing a dream. You're like, I don't know. You have to experience it for the knowledge to land. So for me, it's just a perpetual exploration, and all I do is learn and then see what lands with me. And that's what I teach. So awareness insight meditation is cultivating awareness, first of all. First and foremost, practicing on a daily basis, becoming aware of what's happening in your body, what's happening in your mind, and understanding the importance of the communication between the two, and using that as a way to enhance your knowledge of self. And then also helping you communicate with the part of you that isn't the thoughts, that isn't the emotions, the part of you that's actually kind of facilitating this whole process. So the insight that we gain from awareness, for me, has been absolutely everything in me making slightly different choices over the last 10 years, which now result in a very different person, even though essentially I'm the same. The choices I make, how I show up in the world, how much service I am to the people around me is very different to what I was like 15 years ago.
I just want to say the way that you just described everything was so beautiful. And what it brought up for me is, especially in terms of experience and learning and gaining knowledge, I'm not really a yoga person. I don't engage in that modality. I danced quite a bit, but there's some exercises I remember doing with you at Light's retreat. And I remember being in them and going, wow, I've never had my body in this position before. This is quite interesting. And when you were describing your experience of going to teacher training and the first things that you learned, it sparked in me. I was like, I don't know what she's talking about. I actually am very curious now about discovering what yoga taught you. And even, you know, if Vedic meditation, let's say, is the iPhone, why would you choose something else? Is simply because you're looking for a non-iPhone experience to have, which you can't get with an iPhone.
Yeah.
And that's the whole beauty of the life that we're living, is to create and have experience. So, I mean, you're inspiring me. I'm also very curious to study other types of meditation, because I've had one that's significant and beautiful and lovely, although I don't know what it means to practice Buddhist meditation or Vipassana. I can't speak from that place because I haven't done it, and that is a reason to do it, you know? So you're inspiring me to embark on those journeys.
Oh, cool.
Don't do it, Derrick.
Because I feel like what you just said was, you know, Vedic meditation, for the most part, is a transcendent experience where we're stepping beyond all these things, which is quite lovely. And the byproducts from that are profound. However, what you just described is much more visceral and much more encapsulating of the physical senses in a much different way. And so practicing these different things would allow for some things of being more present in that moment, as opposed to, okay, I could be there, but let's transcend that. So I'm actually very curious. What would it be like to practice the type of meditation that you're talking about and shift the awareness and what's going on inside my body and explore that? I've not done that. So I'm going to sign up.
And the
It's just kind of happened all very organically for me. And what I've found is I have to teach what I'm experiencing. Otherwise it's exhausting. And also I'm not very good at I'm much better at articulating what's happened for me. And my meditation is a very somatic, visceral experience. And everyone's is different. So some people, you know how some of your students see lots of colors. And I remember reading this book once, had the most incredibly hilarious title. It was like, I don't know, something about a woman's search for, I don't know, a really like feminist title. But she would go off and do these meditations in this cabin, and she'd see it was like she was having an LSD trip. And I was like, oh man, as someone who used to do lots of drugs, I was like, how come I don't get that? And I wondered and then I remember for maybe a few months, just like I'd meditate and I'd be like, is it happening? Is it happening? And I think that was it's the carrot. Like it's I want that crazy shit to happen. So yeah, my practice is very, very much in my body. That being said though, I think shifting our habits, anything that becomes really habitual can become dangerous. Even me saying my meditations are very somatic and visceral, who's saying that? Like, is that conditioning? Is that a belief that is true or not true? Like, I think questioning everything, being curious about everything, especially what our teachers tell us, and going, is that true for me? Who says that? Have I experienced that? Is really, really important. So Krishnamurti's teaching I love, because he's basically, no one can teach meditation. You have to experience it for yourself. And so I think like my job as a teacher is to introduce people to this thing, have them experience some physical benefits. So that's why Vedic meditation is so phenomenal, because you do experience physical benefits, and you can escape the mind potentially a little quicker with the mantra technique. So because the mind is obviously for most people the biggest barrier. Oh my God, I think too much. I can't meditate. So if you can help people, if you can gateway drug them in, teach them these tools, get them entrenched in a practice that is consistent, because consistency is everything. And if you can help them create that habit, and then the doors blow open and maybe they start their own journey of discovery and questioning and exploration of what it is to be human, because that's, I think, what meditation and has done for me. And that's why I love, the Buddha's Four Noble Truths. And that first one is, you're a human being, it's going to suck sometimes. But reframing the relationship to that suckiness. And, for a whole year almost, most of the world has been in varying degrees of suckiness. Maybe it's not about escaping it or changing it. Maybe it's about reframing our relationship to that. So our meditations are like this little microcosm of life every time. And we get to see, what are we avoiding? What are we trying not to feel? What are we trying not to think? What do we make that mean about ourselves? And even just the curiosity is everything in this.
Okay, thanks for sticking around until the end. And I hope you enjoyed Claire's fascinating and authentic take both on alcohol and meditation, and thank you for joining us, Claire. Each episode we offer a takeaway, an exercise you can do at home to apply this knowledge to your own life. In this episode we were talking about alcohol and examining habits we may repeat without thinking. And this week we invite you to take stock of your own habits. If you drink, take a few moments to think about your drinking. Think about why you drink. Is it to relax or release stress? And then think about whether it actually delivers on that, including how you feel the next day. And if you don't drink, think about any other compulsive habits you might have, like watching TV or scrolling through social media. And if you're happy to share your stories, we'd love for you to join the conversation. Please send them through to us at stories@thevediconversation.com or post them on social media with the hashtag #TheVedicConversation. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a rating and a review, and we'll see you next time.